I've got a great way for you to get a head start on your retirement and enjoying your retirement. It's called collecting Social Security. Now, that's a huge issue, and that is, when do I collect Social Security? Well, the decision about when to collect Social Security is an emotional decision as well as a financial decision. And I'm going to talk about how I did that and how I processed it. To begin with, generally speaking, depending on your age, but for the most part, for most of us, at least in my age bracket, is that your full retirement age is age 67. And what that means is that you get 100% of the benefit at age 67. Now, you can take Social Security, start collecting Social Security at the age of 62. Now, the amount, of course, will be less compared to if you waited 5 years and getting it at 67. Now, there's also, the maximum, I think, age in which you could benefit from not taking it, I think, is around 70 years old. Because after that time, there's no incentive. Because it increases every year that you do not take it up until about the age of 70. So, now, what I did is that I was on the fence about, do I retire now? Do I collect Social Security later and get a bigger check? And, I was struggling with this idea of retiring to begin with. And, but the reality is that you're not going to live forever. And yes, a bigger check, if you, instead of taking it at 62, you take it at 67, then that's going to be a bigger check. But the bottom line is, you might be dead by age 67, because I know a lot of stories about people that, my neighbor, for example, is that he said his brother retired and he collected Social Security, got his first check, and he died the next month. So of course, I don't know what his brother's medical condition was, but I knew that he was a hard worker, and I wanted to hire him as a home inspector, but that's a whole nother story. Nevertheless, so you don't know when you're going to die. And so this idea of getting a bigger check, was not a sufficient incentive for me to wait. Now, one of the things that you might hear about is this idea of a break-even point. And that is that if I take Social Security at 62 instead of 67, that means that by the time that you reach age 67, you are 5 years ahead of things. You've been collecting Social Security for 5 years. So if you, let's say, make $1,000 a year in Social Security payments, or receive $1,000 a year, let's say if you receive $1,000 a month in Social Security payments, checks, that's $12,000 a year, and by the time that you reach 67, you've received $60,000. You're $60,000 ahead of the game. Now, but if you waited until age 67, you've got a higher paycheck. Is there a point in time in which I could, if I live that long, that I look back and thinking, oh, I should have collected it at 67? That's the break-even point, okay? The time in which, there was a financial benefit in retrospect to you waiting and taking it at 67. Well, that age, generally speaking, the break-even point of taking it at 62 versus taking it at 67 is 78 years old, give or take. That, I think it's a good chance I'm going to be alive at 67, but am I going to be alive at 78? I don't know. I hope so. Hope I live to 90, 95, 100. And, but I don't know that. But I know that there's a greater chance that I'll be alive at 67 versus 78. Consequently, I decided to take my Social Security at 62 and 6 months. And that was a really good decision. And I do not regret that decision. Now, of course, your own I would suggest that you consult with your own financial analyst about this. But the idea for me to take it is that it freed up an awful lot of opportunities for me. Is that I had income. I was getting paid every month, and so that kept the wife happy. She was still working, and now there are also restrictions, so to speak. Is that I've collected it early, prior to full retirement age, and there is an earnings limitation on that, and that means that I can only make it around. If I were to work, I can't make any more than like $22,000 a year. So, not that I want to work. And it's kind of a complicated formula, but I'm not seeing I'm going to be working anytime soon. There's a possibility just for fun, but there is an earnings cap. But once you reach 67, that earnings cap is no more. And even as you approach the 67, for example, in this situation, it's you're given a higher ceiling, and that adjusts for inflation. So when it comes to down to the financial decision, is that I like the bigger idea of a bigger check, but I also wanted to live my life at the moment, and so I decided financially to take it at 62, and I've not regretted that because I could be dead at 67, and the difference at age 78 is not all that significant because you've got your 5 years, because the next year is like, oh man, I left $2,000 on the table. Well, yeah, but you're 79. So anyway, there's a way to calculate that. But so that's the financial matter about it. But there's also an emotional matter about collecting Social Security for me, is that I'd worked full time since I was a teenager, and I have trouble trying to figure out ways that I've put my life on hold in a lot of ways. I mean, I've enjoyed my careers, most of them, not towards the end, of course, but I did have a lot of fun, and I wish I'd done more hobbies, and so that's what I'm going to also explore on this channel, is finding hobbies. But to be able, when you apply for and receive Social Security, is that you're telling the world, essentially, or at least the federal government, I'm retired, and that has its own identity crisis and own identity difference in your life. And so that's the emotional aspect about it. And I struggled with that for at least a year, and about being retired. And then, I'm loving it now. And for me, that was prone to work my entire life, and more work, less play. It was an adjustment for me. But it's an adjustment, and it's a new job, so to speak, that I'm looking forward to. Because I want to jump out of bed in the morning, just like I did in an earlier career. Just at this age, I just don't want to be injured when I jump out of bed in the morning. So, hope that helps. See you next time.